The business is this. This is a Fallout lore video, so there will be spoilers, obviously. Simple enough.
In Fallout New Vegas, the player character, the Courier, heads to Fortification Hill with 2 missions. 1, to recover the platinum chip they were contracted to deliver to Mr. House, the sole proprietor of New Vegas.
I prefer the term autocrat.
And 2, to confront the man who stole the chip, shot them in the head, and ran away.
I prefer the term relocated.
That man is Benny, once a smug criminal mastermind, now bound with ropes, awaiting whatever grim fate Caesar's Legion has in store for him. Benny had planned to escape with the platinum chip, but his plans were thwarted when he was captured by the Legion, the most dreaded military power in the Mojave.
Worst of the worst. A tribe of degenerate losers led by a creep. They crucify people for kicks, slaughter whole towns.
Recognizing strategic assets when they see them, the Legion seized both Benny and the chip for their own purposes.
I wasn't gonna tell them what it was used for, but let's just say they were persuasive.
Benny's iconic checkered jacket is wrinkled. His charm is dulled by days of captivity, but his eyes gleam with smug defiance. Caesar commands the Courier to use the platinum chip to destroy the old world bunker buried beneath them, Mr. House's hidden stronghold.
Down the hill, at the west edge of camp, is an old building. Inside the building is a hatch. And inside that hatch are 2 steel doors that bear the sigil of the Lucky 38 casino. Now that same sigil is on the platinum chip Benny was carrying when we captured him. I think the platinum chip opens those doors that can't be pried open, or drilled open, or blasted open. I tried. I want you to destroy whatever you find in there, and then I want you to come back here and tell me about it.
But before the Courier can carry out Caesar's orders, Caesar grants them the power to decide Benny's fate. How do they want to pay back the crook who tried to kill them? A fight in the arena? A crucifixion, perhaps?
Yeah, real popular around here. It's a crowd pleaser.
Caesar enjoys his power position while the Courier wrestles with the grueling decision. They may even ask Benny himself how he wants to go.
Yeah, to die in my sleep at a ripe old age after a marathon session of hey-hey with 30 sex-starved broads. You'll set that up?
But then Benny pleads with the Courier. Despite his vulnerable position, his voice is steady, and he doesn't ask for mercy. He doesn't ask for freedom. He urges the Courier to finish what he started long before that fateful night at the Good Springs Cemetery.
Whatever's down in that bunker is the key to the city called Vegas. So here's what you do. You go down there and you use the chip to do whatever Mr. House woulda wanted you to do. And when you get back to the Strip, you find Yes Man. I made it so that cat can't help but be helpful. Dig?
What is this bombastically dressed charlatan playing at? The Courier has to consider what they just heard. Benny sounds so sincere, but why would he expect the Courier to take him seriously? It's not like Benny has a history of operating in their best interest. Why would anyone carry on a caper that once literally put them in the ground? And who or what is a yes man?
Look, I ain't a harbor for illusions. I ain't expecting to get out of this shindig alive. That's why I'm trying to hand you my scheme, baby. It's called having a legacy.
And suddenly, there's depth in a character who has thus far been defined exclusively by his superficiality. Now we know Benny cares about something more than his own life. But why this? And why does he appear to believe so sincerely that the Courier should care too? The story of Benny and Mr. House could easily be seen as a simple tale of a disgruntled employee betraying his despot employer. But if Benny's endgame went beyond his own personal interests, if he wanted a legacy, this clues us into the far more layered story. A primal struggle between 2 people whose ambitions for New Vegas could never coexist, and yet somehow remain virtually identical. Their competing visions for the Mojave have always been fueled by the same underlying belief that they alone know what's best for Vegas and are willing to use whatever tools at their disposal to make their vision a reality. Mr. House's tool is power. Benny's tool is cunning. Benny and Mr. House were once allies with shared goals. Robert Edwin House was born before the Great War that devastated mankind, but survived because of his unparalleled foresight and technological mastery.
Before the Great War of 2077, I was the founder, president, and CEO of Robco Industries, a vast computer and robotics corporation. By 2065, I deemed it a mathematical certainty that an atomic war would devastate the Earth within 15 years. Every projection I ran confirmed it.
As the bombs fell, House used his advanced defense systems to shield Vegas from total annihilation.
On the day of the Great War, 77 atomic warheads targeted Las Vegas and its surrounding areas. My networked mainframes were able to predict and force transmit disarm code subsets to 59 warheads, neutralizing them before impact. I nearly died, but I survived, obviously, and eventually thrived.
By connecting to a life support system inside the Lucky 38 casino, he extended his lifespan far beyond natural limits, spending over 2 centuries meticulously planning the rebirth of New Vegas.
Let's just say it was very costly. But I was willing to make the sacrifices longevity entailed, financial and otherwise.
He envisioned a beacon of civilization in a post-apocalyptic world, the neon heart of the Mojave wasteland.
New Vegas is more than a city. It's the remedy to mankind's derailment. By the time I was 30 years old, I was a billionaire 30 times over. I founded and ran a vast economic empire. Give me 20 years, and I'll reignite the high-technology development sectors. 50 years, and I'll have people in orbit.
House wanted to build New Vegas because he believed New Vegas needed building, and he was the right man for the job. It was as simple as that.
I have no interest in abusing others, just as I have no interest in legislating or otherwise dictating what people do in their private time. But firm control in the hands of a technological and economic visionary, that Vegas shall have. If you want to see the fate of democracies, look out the windows.
In the years leading up to Vegas's reawakening, Benny was a member of the nomadic boot riders tribe that roamed the Mojave, as the name would suggest, on foot.
We were nomadic badasses not to be trifled with, a gang of ruffians, though with a certain panache.
The chairmen, as we know them now, they were nomads, went by the unfortunate appellation of the Mojave boot riders.
House saw the boot riders' potential to fit perfectly into his vision, but they initially resisted him. That is, until he insisted.
We were east of Vegas when the first Securitron we ever saw rolled up on us. We junked it in a minute flat. The next day, 20 roll up. So we listened.
Once Mr. House's claim to the territory was solidified, and the boot riders were properly demoralized, he offered them a deal.
Said we'd been selected. Vegas needed us to defend it. In exchange, we'd get cushy digs, full stomachs, medical treatment. Everything a nomad never gets, in other words.
I'm not offering you an incentive as crude as money, though there'll be plenty of that. What I'm offering is a future. For you, and for what remains of the human race.
House would allow them to stay and enjoy all the perks of being one of the 3 families that would restore the Strip to glory, but they would have to abandon their wandering ways and adopt the culture that he saw fit for them.
That caused an uproar. Most of the tribe thought we should say no.
It can be safely assumed that on this fateful day, Mr. House was convincing.
You aren't going to ramble on about the virtues of life out in the wastes, are you? It's a desert, you do realize. A radioactive desert where humans subsist in a barbaric state. Difficult to glorify convincingly. They are, however, aptly named. For that's what you'd be out there. Wasted. Here on the Strip, your talents can be put to use.
Benny could see where House was coming from.
Well, I thought it was the best idea ever. Chow to the old ways, baby. Time to swing in style.
The infighting provided Benny an opportunity to seize power, so he challenged their leader, Bingo, to a knife fight, and won, claiming leadership of their gang and cementing its allegiance to House.
He looked so surprised when I stuck that knife in his neck. Thought he was so tough, but he was so slow.
Guided by House's vision, the Bootriders transformed into the Chairman and embraced the trappings of old-world Vegas with tailored suits, a glitzy casino, and a veneer of sophistication.
When House gave us the tops to renovate, his robots dropped off boxes full of suits and ties and wingtip shoes. Told us we were the Chairman now. I said, the name sticks. If the shoes fit, you wear them.
It's hard to believe that not too long ago, most of the families on the Strip were little more than warring tribes.
And when Mr. House came to us with his proposal, we accepted, knowing we stood to gain much. Little did we know how much we'd lose in the process.
At this time, Mr. House's plans to restore the Strip and make New Vegas a beacon of civilization aligned with Benny's own ambitions to progress and secure some power in the process.
It was House's big idea to resurrect the Strip. He recruited the three families as muscle, showed us how to set up casinos, negotiated with the NCR. None of this in person, mind you. Did all of his talking through those Securitrons of his.
If the Courier talks to Benny about House, Benny's tone suggests he may have harbored some admiration for House in those days.
I've gleaned a lot working with Mr. House. He was a good cat to swing with. I still got a lot to learn, but it's coming together.
However, the choices Benny was destined to make indicate there may have also been much deeper resentment toward House than he let on. In the canon Fallout comic book, All Roads, we're introduced to a character who does not appear in-game, the Singer. The Singer was a nostalgic soul, a relic of the Bootriders' nomadic days, who longed for the simplicity of talking around campfires and wandering the Mojave. As the tribe transformed under Mr. House's tutelage, the Singer clung to the old ways, romanticizing the past in his songs. But his nostalgia was infectious, and Benny, ever forward-looking, saw it as a threat. He believed the Singer's nostalgia poisoned the future of the Chairman, and would hinder the tribe's transition into a sophisticated, powerful force on the Strip. In an act of cold pragmatism, Benny laced the Singer's vial with psycho, ensuring a death that appeared as an overdose. It was a calculated move, emblematic of the philosophy Benny had learned to cultivate. Sentimentality was weakness, and Vegas could only thrive by shedding its past and embracing its future. Swank, Benny's right-hand man, harbored clear discomfort over the Singer's death, not only because the man was beloved by his tribesmen, which he was, but even beyond that, the method was not their way. Poisoning him without his knowledge was cruel and robbed him of dignity, and the Benny that Swank knew would agree. Swank was loyal to Benny, but questioned the dishonesty of poisoning the Singer because of the betrayal of their shared values as Bootriders, chairmen, and friends. By challenging him, Swank was being true to both their shared past and to Benny himself. Benny, however, dismissed Swank's concerns with a smirk. He said the only thing in the vial was Vegas, as if Benny was gone and Vegas was all that was left. The way that Benny killed the Singer was not an authentic expression of himself, it was an expression of Vegas. Benny had allowed himself to dissolve into what Vegas demanded of him, what Mr. House demanded of him, because it was necessary for his survival. Benny sacrificed his soul, and it hurt. If he was willing to make that necessary sacrifice, taking on the burden of reality, he expected everyone else to do the same, and resented anyone who pushed back. And the Singer not only pushed back, but he inspired others to do the same. As far as Benny was concerned, that made the Singer dangerous. Benny needed to have control over what the chairman knew and what the chairmen were paying attention to. That meant that people were either following his lead or couldn't be trusted. And the Singer couldn't be trusted, so he had to go. But that's not the same Benny that the Courier meets at the Good Spring Cemetery. New Vegas players meet Benny for the first time when the Courier, down 1 platinum chip, awakens to harsh restraints biting into their wrists. Their vision is blurry, but the silhouette of a man in a checkered jacket sharpens into focus. He's flanked by 2 grim-faced thugs, great Khans, lights of Vegas glowing in the distance. One of the Khans asks, "Will you get this over with?" Benny puts up a finger and silences him.
Maybe cons kill people without looking them in the face. But I ain't a fink. Dig.
This sentiment contrasts pretty starkly with how he killed the singer, cause this is the authentic Benny, the man that Swank knows to be his friend. This Benny doesn't want to embrace a Vegas determined by Mr. House's whims. This Benny is living his dishonest truth. But tragically, he can't be on the up and up with his best friend these days. At least not yet.
Look for a man named Swank, Benny's second in command. He's always been a reliable, if unimaginative, employee.
On House's advice, the Courier may decide to seek Swank's help in tracking down Benny and the chip. If they have evidence of Benny's plot against House, Swank's reaction is just as sad as it is angry.
Jesus, I can't even believe it. After all House did to set us up with this Swank joint. He's trying to pull a fast one on the big man? Crazy bastard.
After everything that they went through, when everyone else turned on Benny, Swank was there. Swank believed. Blood was spilled. The Bootriders went all in, betting on House.
Without Mr. House, we'd still be wearing gecko skins, poking around the ruins with pointy sticks and scalping people for giggles. Sure, he keeps a pretty tight grip on the reins, but Vegas is a wild horse. You can't just give her her head.
But after witnessing Benny's betrayal of the singer, and now learning of his plans to turn on House, Swank has to question whether Benny was ever acting in anyone's interest but his own.
Can't believe Benny's a no-good stinking punk, trying to play House like that.
He can't make heads or tails of what his best friend is thinking anymore. He seems resigned to accept the man he once knew is lost, and may even help the Courier take drastic measures.
Take him out? Jesus. Okay, well, if you think that's the best way to deal with this, I'll send him up to his room. You can ambush him there.
The thing is, until Benny has legit means to challenge House rule, which he's hoping the Platinum Chip will provide, looping in Swank would be dangerous for them both. Swank is just as entrenched as Benny is, and for the time being, the House always wins. Only out here, armed, far outside the gates of the Strip, in the Mojave wasteland where House has no power, can Benny be something resembling an honest man. Benny's relationship with House began with respect, but in the 7 years since he became the leader of the chairman, he had grown increasingly disillusioned by Mr. House's remote approach.
The robots collect House's share of the take every week and life goes on. Ain't exactly what I'd call leadership.
In Vegas, how much you win purely depends on how much you're willing to risk, and Benny didn't like how the House always wins without risking much of anything. And Benny isn't the only one with this opinion. The Omertas are so fed up with House's detachment, they've given him a nickname that can be heard all over Gomorrah.
I tell you, Not at Home is gonna have his day.
That'll teach Not at Home what can go on while he sits in his fucking ivory tower lording down from on high.
House wins because he exploits his exclusive access to a superpowered, flawlessly obedient drone army to enforce his every whim, all from the safety of the Lucky 38.
Mr. House hides Vegas under his skirt when the bombs fall 1,000 years ago, so it belongs to him? Forever? You buy that? Baby, every boss has a line to explain why he's special. Why everyone's gotta do what he says. You're just figuring that out?
Meanwhile, Benny had to take on a hell of a lot more risk with a fraction of the resources. When he wanted the Platinum Chip, he was willing to boot ride the Mojave in the world's most conspicuous blazer to get it. House, on the other hand, sent a mailman.
I spent 2 centuries searching for the Platinum Chip. Now be a good courier and deliver it.
Benny had an honest desire to move forward. He envisioned growth and transformation for both himself and the tribe. And at the time Mr. House entered their lives, it looked like he was paving the way. So Benny welcomed the change. At the time. But that change was turning him into something else. Something he didn't want to be. He didn't want to trick a singer into an undignified death. He wanted to insist on looking a courier in the face before executing them. Because he ain't a fink. Dig? Benny needed to reclaim his soul. But his soul belonged to Vegas, and Vegas belonged to Mr. House. For Benny to truly be free, Vegas must be free. And he could only free Vegas from Mr. House with one thing. The Platinum Chip.
Such a small thing, isn't it? And yet so capacious, so very dear.
The Platinum chip was designed by Mr. House before the end of the world.
It's a very special item. There's nothing else like it in the entire world. Printed in Sunnyvale, California on October 22nd, 2077, the day before the Great War. It was to have been delivered by Courier the following afternoon. But by then, the world had ended. It was lost a long time and difficult to find.
It's the House Edge, baby. Literally. It's what Mr. House needs to stack the odds in his favor. It's some kind of data storage device, dig? So it's the data on the chip that's platinum, not the chip itself. It has something to do with the Securitrons. Upgrades their hitting power, gives them heft.
Not just for my Securitrons. Every aspect of the missile defense grid would have been upgraded too.
The Platinum chip could turn House's operation into a formidable force capable of asserting control over the Mojave and defending it.
Not just against Caesar's Legion, by the way. In fact, the NCR is a more present and insidious threat.
The new California Republic was actively establishing itself as the dominant political power of the Western Wasteland. While their occupation had provided the Strip reliable revenue, they were far from allies.
What is the NCR? People desperate to experience comfort, ease, luxury. A society of customers. If their leaders weren't scheming to steal Vegas out from under me, I'd have no troubles with the NCR at all. The salient issue is that they will go to war with me, if given the chance.
And Benny didn't trust the NCR any more than he trusted House.
A nation of meddlers, trying to muscle in on our action. The NCR is the biggest gang of thieves in the Mojave. Only difference is they pass laws to make their crimes legal before they commit them. The only thing not bad about them is they ain't Legion.
So at this point, as far as Benny was concerned, whatever needed doing, he was doing on his own, and safely out of their way. Like House, he recognized he couldn't make enemies of them either.
NCR soldiers and citizens are our best customers. Plus, they're all that's keeping Caesar's Legion at bay. It's complicated.
But unlike House, he didn't have might on his side. So here's where the cunning comes in. Naturally, he wasn't going to face House directly, but why would he? As we know, House never faced Benny directly either.
Did all of his talking through those Securitrons of his. Ain't exactly what I'd call leadership.
So turnabout is fair play. Enter Yes Man.
Allow me to introduce myself. You can call me Yes Man.
Yes Man is Benny's reprogrammed Securitron.
As I understand it, I used to be just like all those other Securitrons out on the Strip. But then my neurocomputational matrix was completely reprogrammed to be nice. Very, very nice.
Should the Courier discover Yes Man before interrogating Benny, they can confront him about it.
You really weren't supposed to talk to him. He used to be a Securitron on patrol, square as the rest, until I gave him a Mickey in the shape of a pulse grenade. Once he was on the nod, I yanked some wires and dragged him up to the workshop.
The problem is, Benny, didn't exactly have the technical skills to make any use of his junked Securitron trophy on his own.
One of the problems of a tribal workforce, I'm afraid. No intuitive understanding of how complex technologies can be.
I see. I accept your challenge.
Did Benny reprogram that Securitron himself?
I had some help, you see.
So what kind of person helps a guy like Benny, down on his luck with no power to back them? A good person. But where in the Mojave does one find a do-gooder with technical know-how?
One of the followers of the apocalypse, I'm sure.
The Followers of the Apocalypse are a humanitarian group dedicated to education, healing, and rebuilding society.
Gal named Emily, one of the followers over in Freeside, a real whiz when it comes to things technical.
Benny managed to sweet-talk Emily Ortal into reprogramming the Securitron to work for him instead of House. His methods of recruiting her were, unsurprisingly, devoid of scruples.
Ugh, so gross. He'd heard I was interested in Mr. House's technology, so he hit me up, so to speak. It only happened once. I chalk it up to sleep deprivation and one atomic cocktail too many.
It would seem that Benny did not make much of an impression.
Oh, I made an impression, all right. The dent in that mattress was permanent.
Anyway, Benny had one of Mr. House's Securitrons deactivated and wanted it switched back on. He wanted it re-enabled and connected to Mr. House's data network. The trick was getting it to be invisible on the network. If Mr. House detects a rogue Securitron in his system, he remotely fries it.
So thanks to Emily, the Securitron drone was reborn as Yes Man, a robot assistant incapable of declining orders from Benny or anyone else.
I was programmed to be helpful and answer any questions I was asked. I guess nobody bothered to restrict who I answer questions for. That was probably pretty dumb, huh?
Benny learned about the Platinum Chip once Yes Man had access to House's encrypted databases.
The Platinum Chip is the key to overriding and exploiting Mr. House's defenses. Did I just say exploiting? That's not a very nice word.
Benny recognized the Platinum Chip's potential for seizing control of New Vegas right out from under House's upturned nose, and he got all the intel he needed to take action.
Did you know that Mr. House spent 812,545 caps hiring salvage teams to find the Platinum Chip just in the last year alone? Of course you didn't. Or that there were 7 couriers, but 6 of them were carrying junk. How about their exact routes and the mercenary teams that screened them? I knew all that. Pretty smart, huh?
Benny's plan was to hire Great Khans as muscle and ambush the courier carrying the chip. And then ensure it would be that courier's last delivery, by force. Though the ambush initially succeeded, the courier inconveniently survived, setting the stage for a confrontation that will determine the fate of the Strip.
What in the goddamn?
For Benny, the chip didn't just represent power or security against external threats, but also the means to modernize Vegas with freedom and integrity, a Vegas that House was seemingly incapable of imagining.
Vegas gotta swing, baby. Gotta have pizzazz, respect where due, but that old man is square to the core. The Securitrons are where it's at. I need a way to control them, and a way to beef up their hitting power. I get those 2 ducks in a row, Vegas can defend itself versus all comers. NCR, Caesar's Legion, it won't matter. They're gonna try to take the dam again real soon, and if they do, Vegas as we know it will cease to exist.
The Courier may insist that whatever altruistic intent Benny may have, the threat of Caesar or the NCR is no excuse for what he did to them at the cemetery.
Was a time I would have agreed with you, but this, it's too big. It affects too many people. I can't get hung up on those details. What I did to you was rotten, but if you think House, the NCR, or Caesar won't kill to put Vegas in their pocket, I really did blow out your brains.
How did House fail to see Benny's betrayal coming? His assumed dominant position in their dynamic left him with a critical blind spot. Benny, as the underling of the pair, saw value in looking to House for guidance. He allowed himself to grow from the relationship because he gained power by doing so. But House, firmly entrenched in his self-appointed superiority, never considered that while he remained safely secluded in a life support chamber, he might have something to learn from Benny, his eyes and ears among the people on the Strip. House clearly valued Benny's charisma and resourcefulness as key assets, but he underestimated how profoundly his domination of Benny's autonomy would fuel his resolve to reclaim it.
I knew Benny was ambitious, even ruthless, but I believed he would do the job so long as he was incentivized appropriately. Obviously, I miscalculated his drive for supremacy.
House saw Benny as a living, breathing tool that he could control with incentives, like a dog, not as a fellow, free-thinking, autonomous human being with rights, outside of those granted exclusively by House. If House had recognized the value of Benny's dissenting perspective sooner, their story might have taken a different path. As it is, his only reflection on the matter appears to be regret over not exerting even greater control.
Maybe if I'd begun grooming him sooner, none of this would have happened.
House believed he was the best thing that ever happened to the Boot Riders. When he first encountered them, they were a nomadic gang scraping by in the wasteland, scavenging in the dirt, with no vision for their future. But he saw their potential, granted them a luxurious existence on the Strip, and gave them a chance to rise above their circumstances and become part of something greater. Benny, in particular, was the recipient of an extraordinary level of trust and investment. House saw a spark in Benny that set him apart from the rest, He placed him in charge of the tops, nurtured his leadership skills, and made him an intrinsic part of his vision.
Until his recent misbehavior, I'd planned to make him my protege. He would have made a fine agent had he stayed loyal.
For a man as isolated and emotionally detached as House, this level of trust was unprecedented. A bold departure from the way he was famous for operating. There is no way that Benny's betrayal didn't feel, at least in some way, personal.
I have to think that he found out about the platinum chip and mistakenly convinced himself that he could use it to his own ends. Why is good help so impossible to find?
From House's perspective, Benny's actions weren't just treacherous. They were a rejection of everything House had done for him. Possibly the most goodness a man like House is capable of managing. And Benny didn't just defy House's authority, he made a fool of him. He took the power and freedom House had extended to him and levied it against him, reinforcing every reason House has to remain separated from humanity and feel compelled to stay above it. Benny was not only ungrateful toward what House had built, he wanted to tear it all down. So badly, in fact, he was willing to risk his life, even give his life, to do so.
It's called having a legacy.
The embarrassment, the insult, the betrayal, and the abandonment likely shattered what remained of House's artificially preserved heart. When the Courier meets Mr. House for the first time, House dismisses Benny's betrayal and theft as little more than a disappointing inconvenience.
My only concern is the recovery of the platinum chip. What happens to Benny, I leave to your discretion.
And if the Courier successfully retrieves the platinum chip, House swats the topic of Benny's fate away like an annoying fly.
He ceased to be relevant when you recovered the platinum chip. Sorry to deny you a moment of primate triumph, but you'll have to go elsewhere to sound your barbaric yawp. Revenge doesn't interest me. Progress does.
This cold, pragmatic response may simply be an example of House seeing himself as a world-class visionary, above allowing any personal grievances to interfere with his grand plans. However, it may also indicate staunch emotional avoidance. House would never, in a million years, admit that Benny's betrayal was painful. It would be strategically unsound. House is indeed a man defined by cold calculation and a tenacity that borders on inhuman. But he's still, as he has said himself, flesh and blood.
Don't let the video screens and computer terminals fool you. I'm not silicon.
And framing his disinterest in Benny's fate as a righteous rejection of vengeance suggests a very human tendency to emotionally compartmentalize. Despite his immense arrogance and staunch pride in isolation, House's dialogue about Benny reveals a hint of sentimentality.
Benny was the leader of the chairman for 7 years, ever since I recruited the tribe. I considered him something of a protege.
If the Courier tells House about how Benny managed to modify a Securitron, House's reaction carries an unexpected glimmer of pride.
I suspected he'd found a way to access my encrypted databases, but, well, this explains it. Highly resourceful, Benny.
And if Benny manages to pull one over on the Courier at the tops, House is kind of on Benny's side.
What did you expect? Really? Are you going to keep giving him opportunities to kill you? It's becoming a hobby of his.
Losing Benny's loyalty was both a strategic and personal failure, but admitting to feelings of failure isn't what anyone would call the House special. At minimum, he clearly saw Benny as someone worthy, despite finding most of humanity inferior to the point of being virtually useless.
Don't play the fool. Vegas has fools enough, a superfluity of them. They're what makes it so profitable.
House may desperately want to believe otherwise, but he didn't see Benny as just another pawn on his chessboard. He saw a reflection of his younger self. Benny's overt pursuit of power and control didn't feel like a threat. It felt relatable.
I expect my business partners to be self-interested. I have a certain tolerance for greed.
Their shared perspective, at least for a time, fostered a genuine connection between them that would change them both for the rest of their lives. However long that would prove to be. Benny mattered to House, but House couldn't hang on to him, despite his best efforts, which was...
disappointing in the extreme.
This is a man who prides himself on control, both over the Strip and himself. And he needs Benny's freshly vacated position filled. Now. But admitting vulnerability is a risk he can't afford. So he rushes the Courier into position in a sloppy panic. He can't admit what a rush it was, so he's gonna land like a cat and love bomb that Courier like his life depends on it. Because it does.
Oh, don't be coy. You've been playing a high-stakes game ever since Victor dug you out of the ground. Don't be afraid to admit it. See what the Strip I built, the Strip I own, has to offer.
House's adoption of the Courier plays out like the work of a narcissistic abuser grooming a rebound relationship. He's not holding anything back. He's not gonna make the same mistakes he made with Benny. Oh no, not this time.
It's fortunate you came along to replace him. And ironic.
At this point, the Courier isn't dependent on him yet, so there are no strings for House to pull other than their outstanding contract. So he makes an appeal to their ego.
You see that you and I are of a different stripe, don't you? We don't have to dream that we're important. We are. Think about what I could offer you.
And House had one trick up his sleeve he must have been withholding from Benny, and its moment has come. Access to the Lucky 38.
Hello? The guy everyone saw go in the Lucky 38, that was you? Oh, shit.
The Lucky 38 looms over the Strip as a symbol of power and mystery. A relic of the old world, untouched by time. You can see it way out in the Mojave wasteland, from every angle. Everyone knows it belongs to Mr. House, but no one, not even the most powerful figures among the three families, are granted entry. Its doors had always remained sealed, its secrets closely guarded.
Must be cozy up there in the Lucky 38.
To the people of Freeside and the Strip, the Lucky 38 is more than just a building. It's a fortress of untold power, a place where only the most extraordinary could ever hope to be invited. And somehow, some stranger from the wasteland is deemed worthy. The Courier.
I thought nobody has ever been inside that place.
That one must be important around here.
Check that out, he just left the Lucky 38.
And it becomes the talk of the town.
I hear you've actually been inside Lucky 38. You're the first person who's been in there in as long as anybody can remember.
There's talk of someone going into the Lucky 38 to talk to Mr. House.
That's bullshit. Everyone knows Mr. House doesn't talk to anyone.
But the Courier's accomplishments didn't get them into Lucky 38. Benny's failure did.
I mean, Benny was always scheming about how he was gonna get into the Lucky 38, but you already took care of that. Wow.
High roller suite.
The suite House provides the Courier feels anything but spontaneous. It was clearly prepared long before their arrival, and has been maintained since the apocalypse. The dining area is stocked, the bedroom immaculate, and the ample storage suggests foresight for a well-equipped occupant. In particular, a room with multiple beds hints at the larger vision.
You can bring your friends too. Be like a little clubhouse for the gang you put together.
This is not a spare space of convenience. It's a curated sanctuary, waiting for the highest of high rollers, someone House would deem worthy of it, who could live a life there, maybe even start a family there. While it could be argued that this must have been House's living space before the Great War, were that the case, then whose bedroom is this in the penthouse? Who was all of this prepared for, if not Benny and potentially Benny's loved ones? Assuming he ever, managed any.
Ring-a-ding, baby, ta-ta.
Ugh, so gross.
Benny's betrayal obviously derailed those plans, leaving the suite unused and its purpose unrealized until it could get a new lieutenant on payroll immediately.
You are the first person to step foot inside the Lucky 38 in over 200 years. It was not an invitation I made lightly.
Yeah, he was under the gun. With the Battle of Hoover Dam approaching and the stakes higher than ever, House has no time for a drawn-out game of grooming. He needs to win the Courier over right away, so they get the fancy apartment.
There's nothing to think about. You have a job to do, so do it.
So is House in control now? Of course not. The Courier can almost immediately betray this grand gesture of trust by planting a bug for Emily and the followers of the apocalypse.
It was detected immediately and deactivated, 39.735 seconds after you planted it. Good luck planting a surveillance device here in the Lucky 38 without my knowing about it.
House reacts as if his defenses are so rock solid that whatever duplicity the Courier could possibly attempt has already been accounted for, and would therefore be pointless.
You thought I wouldn't notice?
Well, it doesn't look like he's noticing that this is the second time Emily has attempted to bypass his security, the first being a success.
Wow!
It's likely he only detected this device due to system upgrades implemented after his earlier critical failure.
I'm sorry.
And this is far from the last time the Courier could slip through House's fingers. They could hand the Platinum Chip to Caesar, align with the NCR to dismantle his operation, team up with Yes Man to oust him entirely, sabotage his reputation with the three families, or even kill him outright in his life support chamber. They might upgrade his Securitrons, only to turn them against him. House's confidence in his level of control is almost laughable when you consider the countless ways the Courier could undo him. Despite all his genius calculations, House has consistently failed to acknowledge that he cannot avoid the necessity of human trust. So yeah, if the Courier harms Benny, of course House doesn't want to hear about it. Of course he would rather the Courier go elsewhere to sound their barbaric yawp, lest they illuminate the painful burden of a sad old man, too broken to acknowledge he ever dared to care. How much power do we need to feel safe enough to tell the truth? Can we ever feel secure in our honesty if it just exposes our vulnerabilities? Does living authentically pose too much of a risk? Do we lie because we have no other choice? Or are we lying to ourselves about how powerless we really feel? Benny and Mr. House's relationship is emblematic of the larger themes of Fallout New Vegas. Ambition, power, and the tension between old-world ideals and new-world realities. Benny feels abandoned by House's privileged detachment and sees him as unfit to lead, believing that true leadership requires understanding the daily struggles of the people, struggles House feels entitled to shield himself from. Meanwhile, House sees Benny as a failed experiment, an insolent protege who squandered his potential and jeopardized the future of New Vegas in a quest for selfish, superficial glory. But either of them assuming they as individuals are fit to make broad-scale decisions for Vegas behind Vegas's back was always questionable at best. Their alliance was founded on the exchange of power, rather than trust, connection, and shared values that reach beyond self-interest, which made it inherently fragile. The demands of practicality and the pressure to survive were always going to supersede human decency. Benny lies because he can't afford to be honest. If his intentions were out in the open and he were challenged, he would lose.
It's a game, and games have winners and losers. I prefer the former. How about you?
Without control of a robot army, all he can control is who knows what. And if he can control what the robot army commander knows, all the better. House is more honest, but only because it's a privilege he can afford. He can speak openly without facing the kind of consequences Benny would, because any dissent can simply be ignored or crushed.
You needn't be afraid of me. It's my Securitrons that are going to kill you.
As shady as Benny has been, if someone is willing to use whatever tools they have available to them to do what they believe is right for their people, a shady scrapper may be preferable to an armored despot. Like most things in the wasteland, it's a matter of perspective. Regardless, in the end, if both men see themselves as the one true champion of New Vegas, rather than allies deserving of mutual respect, that inability to coexist ensures that only one vision can prevail, and that means war. And as we all know, war
never changes.
Ultimately, whether New Vegas becomes Benny's untamed haven of freedom, embracing chaos as the price of independence, or House's meticulously controlled monument to old-world progress, the Courier's choice in Caesar's tent holds immense weight. Should they decide to use the Platinum Chip to unlock the bunker hidden beneath Fortification Hill, they uncover a shocking secret, a key part of Mr. House's long-term plan for domination, an entire army of dormant Securitrons.
So, all this time the old man had an entire army on layaway? Clever player.
They can follow Caesar's orders and destroy the army, gaining his trust while revealing House's capabilities, or they can activate the Securitrons as House requested, continuing to work for House, or seizing the opportunity to give Benny's dream of a free Vegas a fighting chance.
Make Vegas a town I would have been proud of, baby. Let it swing.
What will they decide for Benny? For Caesar or House? For the Mojave itself? Freedom or control? Risk or order? In the end, the destiny of the Strip, and perhaps even the wasteland beyond, rests on them. A wild card in a game where the stakes couldn't be higher.
You got the future of Vegas in the palm of your hand, baby. What happens next is up to you.
Ring-a-ding-ding, it's the Dins, what's shaking? The jacket arrived just in time for me to record this ending! I was actually at the Pioneer Saloon this year, sick, in my hotel room, writing the script for this very video. I want you to hit that like and subscribe while I rap at you for a bit. If you want to check out the vlog that I posted while I was in the middle of working on this video, kind of telling the story of what led to it, you should check it out. It's on my other channel, Lindsay's Fallout. Sometimes I might call it Lindsay House, because that's where I play the role of Lindsay House. Look at me, I'm Lindsay House. I don't talk like that on the channel. But this video, you can think of it as sort of a debut of a spin-off project. I love the videos on Lindsay House. You should definitely check out my videos about the Fallout TV show. But it's way too personal, way too triggering, and I really want to have a channel that's a little more chill, a little more escapey. So with Dinstopia, it's not going to be about the socio-political clusterfuck we're living in. We're just going to hang out and talk about games and movies and TV shows that we like, but mostly games. So what do we got coming up next? Before we do any more lore, I'm going to be doing a lot of ambience. Doing this thing we're going to call game spaces, location tours. First one is a tour of the Mojave. The way I'm seeing this working is basically whatever game I'm playing, I'm going to have like one big lore video and then a bunch of side game spaces videos. And then once the big lore video is done, move on to the next game. So we're going to have some New Vegas game spaces, and then the next big lore video will be Cyberpunk 2077. I have so much footage. I've got to do something with it. The topic is going to be the unreliable memories of Johnny Silverhand. That's as much as I'll say for now. Then we'll have game spaces for Cyberpunk, and then we will move on to Fallout 4. The big lore video will be about Nick Valentine and synths. Normally I would never talk about things this amount of work in advance, but like, it's almost kind of bucket listy. Like, I really want these videos to exist. Dinstopia will also have comedy as I think of it. That's what I'm not gonna say like, oh, we're gonna do comedy sketches, because I don't want to put pressure on myself to come up with comedy sketches. I want it to be organic, and there are ideas, and they will come. They will be in short form, I believe. But if a series happens, who knows? We will see. I have way more ideas than I could possibly make videos about, so I would really like to have a live stream. Not a playing game stream, but just me talking to y'all. But I am very intimidated and, let's face it, generally fail when I try to do things with other people. So if anybody has ideas of what platform I should use, should I do YouTube Live? Would y'all watch a live stream of me just talking? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. At the time of this recording, I do not have a Patreon, but I think that's the direction that this is going, so check the description. That may have changed by the time you're watching this. I do have a throne wish list. Maybe I should put this jacket on it in like a slightly smaller size. Speaking of which, somebody out there got me this from my wish list, and whoever you are, if you're out there watching this, thank you. Oh yeah, I should turn it this way too, that would help. Since I'm working on the game spaces stuff now, if anybody out there could send me an invite to whatever Fallout New Vegas modding community you recommend. I need New Vegas modding friends. Cyberpunk modding has spoiled me, and I ran into problems that I don't know how to fix. Obviously, you can talk to me in the comments, but I will be providing other ways to reach me in the description. I'm sorry that at the time of this recording, there are not official, clean, nice, closed captions, and I don't like that, but I really had to get this video online and move on with my life. Hopefully that will change soon. If some kind soul wants to donate an SRT file to the cause, you will get a credit in the description. But my lord, do I need to get back to, like, human life. Because if you're wondering if this video was a hyperfixation tunnel, oh yes, it was. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you stick around for what's next.